people who are professional, though, are people like lawyers and shit. They're always really professional kind of people. So maybe we should get one to come and have a chat with us. Let's welcome to the show, Tanya Waikato. Kia ora, Tanya. Welcome.
Kia ora, boys. How's it going?
It's going really good. I know that you did a little tease release last week, but we kind of said last night that there is this thing on the horizon to do with BHN and Tanya Waikato and the aforementioned podcast. So we kind of told everyone that last night. I know you'd already told your crew, and I thought as a part of tonight's conversation, maybe we could ask you, what do you want to do with your podcast? Why don't you tell us what you want to do with the podcast on BHN to start the show?
Why not? I've actually been working away very quietly behind the scenes, getting a whole bunch of people lined up for my new podcast on VHN, which is probably the worst kept secret that there is. And what I've been asking all of my guests to come and talk about is what their vision for Hawaii Ho is, which is this cool little catchphrase that's been doing the rounds for quite a while now. And what it actually means is we talk about Hawaii as our homeland, where we came from. Some people think it's Hawaii. Some people think it's this mythological place that nobody really knows where it is. But Hawaii Ho is this idea of the future and a vision for Aotearoa, however you want to describe it. And what does that look like for each individual person? And what is it that they're working towards in their particular lives that will contribute to what it looks like in the future? So I've got a whole bunch of politicians, I've got a bunch of musicians, lots of other random people that I know through work and other parts that I do, and it's shaping up to be quite a fun little show, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, not just politics. We're going to have music, we're going to have current affairs, we're going to have all sorts of things on the show.
Cool, man. And we're still working out finer details as to how and when, like, will it be live, will it be a pre-record, whatnot, but we're in those conversations. I'm hoping, what are we now, with the 22nd of July, by the end of July we'll probably know. Would that be fair, you reckon? We'll know, give some details done within the next week or so?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've already got quite a few people lined up to come on the show, and they're all really keen to come and have a chat and have a yarn and tell us some stories. I've got some very interesting stories coming up, which I can't talk about just yet. But yeah, what I'll say is there's a lot of crossovers with my work and my playtime, which is what we're doing right now, that are all kind of smashing together quite nicely. So we might have some exclusives on the podcast to kick us off as well.
Very cool. And as we said last night, it's like you've got an economist from the CTU, you've got an emergency doctor from Northland, you've got a lawyer who works with Te Pāti Māori, and then you've got Pat and Chewie, those dudes who've got no accreditation to
doing
them
sports.
Doing sports.
You kind of got all the bases covered right there, boys.
Yeah, you go do all the proper work and we'll just keep on calling ex-politicians dirty names. That'll be our...
Well, we need the man on the street. You always need the man on the street, right?
Yeah, and when you find him, point him our way. Yeah. Okay, guys, let's get into this conversation, shall we? I'm going to just play your TikTok, the one that is the Western TikTok. It's a beautiful thing to get us going, because it's talking about the potential ructions within this coalition, and it's all coming around the RSB, which has obviously been a passion project for you so far. Let's have a look at the TikTok you put up there. Good hat, by the way. Yeah, good hat. We like that.
I love the hat. Howdy, partners. I hope that you stocked up on your popcorn, because today's episode is turning into a little bit of a Western, complete with a showdown brewing between Winston Peters and David Seymour. So, as the headline states, David Seymour's come out and said that you never play poker with your cards on the table. It's very Kenny Rogers and the Gambler.
It's actually wrong as well, because cards are always on. You never show your cards, is what he was looking for.
But you can't even get that right.
That's why you have a poker table, because your cards sit on the table. So, yeah, he's even got that wrong.
Breakdown says that the ACT Party's Bigotry Standards Bill is being billed as the thing that could crack open the coalition. As David Seymour names it as an absolute bottom line, while his partners over here say that changes are needed.
There you go. We pointed this out last night because we did the Tama Potaka conversation from Q&A. And I'll just play another 60 seconds here because in one of the articles, it was either Newsroom or interest.co.nz, that they're reporting that when David Seymour heard what Tama Potaka is, he said, "What?" Like it was
it was
what?
Newsroom. I read it.
It was Newsroom. And so let's just have a look for 60 seconds, actually what Tama did say about the Regulatory Standards Bill on Q&A over the weekend.
Is he right?
Well, I don't think the Regulatory Standards Bill in its current form acknowledges tikanga, but I think that over all bills and over all acts, I have a very serious expectation that treaty responsibilities and rights are upheld.
So is the UN Special Rapporteur right in his criticism?
Well, in the current wording of the Regulatory Standards Bill, it does not mention tikanga and it does not mention the treaty principles, and that's actually a concern that many of my own colleagues, peers, even my daughter, have mentioned.
We'll keep going on this, Tanya, but we said last night probably the daughter thing is probably the worst thing for a politician. If their daughter's pissy with them, something's wrong there.
Hey, what's going on here? But
I think the Prime Minister criticised his letter.
Criticised
that letter?
Yeah, I acknowledge the Prime Minister criticised that. What I'm saying is a lot of people have expressed their concerns to me over that, and it doesn't acknowledge tikanga. And in terms of treaty responsibilities and rights, I think that those are fundamental constitutional issues that actually sit over and above all legislation.
Will you vote?
I can understand when you hear Mr. Seymour's response being, "What?" Because that sounds like a dude who is going, "Yeah, I don't like this. There are others that don't like this." But like me and Chewie were saying last night, I don't know how, we don't talk about families typically, but if his daughter's like a 20-year-old university student, how do you face your daughter if you vote for a thing that is supposedly, we're being told, you can give us all the lowdown, going to rip the treaty out of all New Zealand legislation? So you can throw you the ball now. And Winston Peters is saying things as well about there needs to be changes. And Tama Potaka is saying publicly lots of people aren't happy with this. And David Seymour's going, "Hang on, we have a deal." What are your thoughts?
Well, hearing Thomas say that was a very interesting kind of side curveball for me, because Winston Peters and Shane Jones have been making these noises for a long time. So I think the last time I was on your show, we talked about the fact that the day after our hearing in the Waitangi Tribunal on the Regulatory Standards Bill, New Zealand First very clearly timed it so that a newspaper article came out in Newsroom again, which had comments from Winston saying, "We've got issues with this bill and it's not a done deal," essentially. And they've just been continually feeding that out to the media at very strategic points and increasing that rhetoric as it goes along to get stronger and stronger, to the point where they're now saying we need to see substantial changes to this bill. And so Winston hasn't really changed his tune. He's just getting stronger on it. So what's really interesting about Tama now coming out and very publicly saying, virtually, "I agree with what the Special Rapporteur has said in this letter, which is highly critical of the Regulatory Standards Bill." This is now national through Tama coming out and very publicly distancing themselves from the Regulatory Standards Bill. And do not make any mistake, the timing of this is absolutely deliberate, because we've just had the oral hearings on the Regulatory Standards Bill. There were a number of submissions that were made in opposition by some very smart people and some very well-respected, not just academics. We had Sir Geoffrey Palmer, who made a very clear submission about the ramifications of this piece of legislation. We even had the Office of the Clerk making a submission, which you could say, was it in opposition? They were making some observation as to how the legislation might work. And so for me, these are very clear signs that the government is trying to distance itself. Does that mean that they're going to demand some serious changes to the bill? We will see very soon. But for me, that is the first time that I've seen a national MP and a minister at that say anything of that magnitude.
So it leads to two possible conclusions. One is exactly what you're saying, It's a deliberate placement of information into the public arena that it has been planned from the 9th floor, gone down through Tama to the public. The other option is there's a split. Well, yeah, there's a potential split within there, and some of these guys are going. I'm basically sitting there not on board. Well, do we have Marie Dyberg the other day, Chewie? Is that who we had from the 80s? And she was saying how many times she crossed the floor, like for the nuclear boats and that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you're getting in the neck from your daughter, and your party's still saying, well, it's a government bill and it's part of the coalition agreement, is he going, hey, Luxo, you don't have me, and there's some others as well?
I don't know. I honestly don't get that feel from Tama. I don't think he's got the guts, to be honest with you. I don't think he's that type of politician. If you were talking about me, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, But I just don't think that he's the type of go it alone politician that would put his neck out and basically put his head on the chopping block for us. I just really don't think that he's that type of politician. I think he's been instructed, like you say, the messages come down the pipeline, and they deliberately chose that particular interview, because you think about it, anybody that is interviewed by Jack Tame, that is immediately going to be watched by the whole country. People talk about it. And if he's going on that interview, he has got his instructions as to what he's going to say. He's not just going to make stuff up on the spot about what he's going to talk about. And if you saw how strongly Jack pushed him on the homelessness issue, because Jack was trying to get an answer out of him. I think he asked him 4 or 5 times about whether or not to change policy. Exactly. I was watching and I was like, bro, and he was just recycling the rhetoric that he had been trained to say. So, in the context of the whole interview, for me anyway, it felt rehearsed, and it felt like very deliberate that the 2 things that were in the special rapporteur's letter were the 2 things that he kept repeating. So for me, it was a rehearsed thing. He was schooled on it, and he delivered the message.
Yeah, no, I think that's a astute observation, that those rehearsed lines were, I reckon it was possibly the worst interview by any minister, and that means it's worse than Nicole McKee. There's a few to light up against side, but yeah, that does look like a prepared statement. So if those are,
like Chewie counted, I did as well. Like, I'm sure everybody was sitting there counting how many times he avoided the question and how many times he reiterated the same point over and over. And it's really clear when you see politicians just saying the same thing. They've been trained to say it, and they either don't have the guts to answer the question themselves, or they don't have the intelligence to answer the question off the cuff. And to be honest, I think that someone in his position, he is a minister, he does have, a number of portfolios that he's responsible for. He's given the line, and his job is to deliver the line, and that's what he did.
And I guess what I hear you saying is there's this Occam's razor thing that goes, if the first 3/4 of the interview are so obviously prepared statements, it makes sense that one is also prepared. That would make more sense than it being off the cuff. Chewie, jump in, sir.
Yeah, so I'm worried, and I guess I'm worried this talk about, like, Winston's going to chuck his toys, somebody's going to cross the floor, is cope. And obviously I want it to happen, but I also want it to be realistic about how much chance there is. When do we find out? When's the point of no return for this sort of stuff?
Well, there's always a chance, and people have been asking me this question for a long time now, and so I've explained to a lot of people, we are still in the select committee stage of this bill, right? So we've had our oral submissions. The select committee is now compiling their report, and then they will report back to the House once they've done that. Now, that's a really important step for this particular bill, because of the number of submissions that were put in. And I've been told that it was actually more than 130,000. I've been told it's actually upwards of 150,000 is the latest numbers that I've been given from some insiders as to how many there were. And they're still processing those submissions as well. So that's still happening. Once that's done, that is going to have quite a big impact in terms of what happens next in the House. So they'll go back, the report will be given back to Parliament. Now, that is an opportunity right there for New Zealand First and for National, if they are having these sort of, okay, are we really going to go down this pathway? Are we actually going to back this the whole way? That is the point when they will be making the decision, and they will be using what's in that report to basically go, okay, well, the report said X, so we're going to change this. Or there was this much opposition against this part of the bill, so we're going to change this. So they'll use it as an excuse, but they'll also have their people that are on the select committee putting those things in there for them to do this. So that's another thing for people to understand, is that committee is made up of a majority of the government MPs. So they are the ones that will, at the end of the day, control what goes into that report. And the Labour Party MPs who are on there, the Green Party MPs and the Te Pāti Māori MPs who are on that committee as well, they will have an opportunity to disagree with the things in the report that they don't like and put a different point of view in there. But at the end of the day, the majority on that committee is the government MPs. So they will have the biggest lion's share of what goes into that report. So it's going to be slanted regardless, but that's why it's interesting, because if National is having doubts, they'll slant it so that they can get out of jail on whatever it is that they want to get out of jail on.
Right.
Okay. Chewie, more?
Oh, God, it's a long road.
It's a marathon, bro. It's a marathon.
It really is. Is this a marathon that we want to carry on because it is doing damage in the public sphere to the government?
Yes, absolutely. And the thing with this particular bill, and we talked about this a little bit the last time I was on the show, is that this is the one bill that does have the potential to crack this coalition, and you can see it happening already. And when I did another interview, I said that of all of the pieces of legislation that are coming through, this is the only one that is of enough gravity and has enough controversy associated with it that it could push National and it could push New Zealand First. And to be honest, I did not expect National to do what they've just done. I wasn't expecting them to come out publicly at this stage and start distancing themselves so clearly. So for me, we're actually ahead of where I even sort of dreamed that we could get to with the pressure that we've been putting on them. So for me, we're actually probably 2 steps further along than I thought we would be at this stage. I thought that it wouldn't be until after the select committee that National would potentially start to say, oh, we're not sure about this. So for me, that's a bit of a win for us. The other thing too that I just wanted to mention is privately to various sources that have reported it back to me, New Zealand First is saying that they're going to block this at the second reading. And I can't vouch for whether or not that's true or whether or not they are actually going to do it, but I've been told that by several different sources. So if that's just them electioneering, who knows? But for me, the fact that they're even saying that to people publicly and to people that they probably know me, they probably know would tell me, that's planting seeds regardless of whether or not they're actually serious about doing it. So for me, the fact that they're out there publicly saying we're going to block this at second reading, number one, that says to me that there's some plan going on. Whether or not it's a plan to actually block it or whether they're going to gut it, I don't know, and we're going to have to wait and see. But what it is doing is it's setting up a showdown.
Couple of things. The first is we don't ever need to hear about you doing other interviews. It does feel a bit wrong. So
it's hurtful.
That's hurtful.
I'm sorry, boys. I'm sorry.
I feel cheated on just a little bit. But the second thing is we have been saying all the way through this, if anyone, like when the first lot of submissions went through, 23,000, the first round, and there was 76 that were in supporting it. If there's 150,000, they might be upwards of 500 individual supporting ones now if the numbers were to stay the same. But Luxon, if nothing else, I think will acknowledge and recognise public opinion. I don't think he's a good politician. I don't think any of us think he's a particularly good politician, but I think even he's not dumb enough to go, if if let's say 70% of respondents are against this, 20% are unclear, and 10% are for it, you don't take that into a 1 year out from an election. So it will be really interesting to see what happens once those numbers come out. And I like it that you say that they're still going through them. And I was wondering, is that like they print them out and they put them into the shredder? Is that about as much going through them as they're doing at the moment? But yeah, I mean,
Well,
I don't. I mean, you could. I think you can trust him to be a bad politician, which means you can trust him to have no backbone, trust him to have no spine. So you can trust him that if a massive groundswell, pardon the pun, massive tsunami wave of "don't do this" is put in front of him, his spinelessness might work in our favor. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, that was one of the reasons why we went so hard in the campaign to get people to make submissions, because we know these politicians don't care about anything except for the numbers. So even though, David Seymour's come out and even James Mager came out and said, the select committee process isn't for people to make one-line submissions. I don't accept that at all. If people only have the capacity to say, we oppose this bill, and that's all that they have either the time to do because they're too busy trying to put bloody food on the table, or because they don't have the ability to express themselves any further than we just know we don't like it and that's all we want to say. Well, who are they to deny people having their say in the democratic process? I just find that whole idea and concept that these politicians are saying people's opinions who got off their butts and made a submission doesn't count. I find that very disrespectful. And I also find it really, for me anyway, in this day and age when people really are struggling just to survive, for them to go that far and to, participate in a process like this is a massive thing for people to do. So I think there are so many things playing out within this little microcosm of this particular bill that just say a lot about where New Zealand politics is as a whole. And I agree with you. I think that National is starting to understand this isn't a one-off. The Treaty Principles Bill wasn't a one-off. Us being able to mobilize massive numbers and massive amounts of people, it isn't a one-off. And people are following us because they believe in what we are doing and because they're sick of the BS that the politicians are feeding them and they want something different. And if the politicians don't wake up in time for the next election, that's fine because the people will start using their voice with their votes.
Yeah, and a bit later on in the show, we're going to have a look at some Talbot Mills numbers that came out today, which is kind of saying that. But one other thing before we wrap up, Tanya, and you pointed me to the interest.co.nz article. Chris Trotter, who's an interesting sausage at the moment when it comes to where he used to be on the left and sort of what his positions are now.
Oh, Trotter.
I know, Chewie. That's what makes this article so interesting, though.
But, big but, for about the past 3 or 4 weeks, it seems that David Seymour's antics and utter disrespect for the position of Prime Minister, like sending a letter to the UN when he had no right to do that, is just like, we'll just screw the way this is, and I'm going to do what I want. We felt like for about the past 3 weeks, Chewie, that we've been saying, he's entered electioneering already. He's acted because he's acting like an opposition MP. Like disregard for how government runs. He's just going to do what he wants when he wants, like he's the leader of ACT in opposition. And then Chris Trotter came out with this. Over the next 15 months, the clear strategic imperative for all 3 coalition partners is breakout. Each must seize as much of the right's ideological territory as possible for themselves. It seems like, he's a few weeks behind us, but Mr. Trotter has kind of put out there as well, electioneering has started. I can imagine that Seymour would probably be even more so than, say, Chloe, but Seymour would be the happiest person in the world if there was no Winston Peters there next year. So you've got these conflicts about to come up as all of these guys go back into electioneering. And how much of the news to do with David Seymour in particular, me and Chewie and whoever our guest is going, because he's speaking to his base. That's the only people. He doesn't care about whatever stand-up he's doing or group he's speaking to or whatever. He's speaking to his base because he's electioneering. Any thoughts?
And they all are, to be fair, and that's what Winston is absolutely doing as well, because the thing with the regulatory standards bill and its timing as well, coming, where we are in the election cycle right now, is they are on the cusp of having to pull away from each other, and there's going to be this cannibalism of, the votes on the right. So you're going to have New Zealand First coming for the national voters, you're going to have ACT coming for the national voters, and the way that they do that is by separating themselves from each other and by criticising each other. So that's another reason why the regulatory standards bill is the powder keg that's waiting to blow up. And it's a question of who's going to blink first. One of the things that was really interesting in that article that Chris Trotter put out about David Seymour and what he is saying lately is the fact that he decided to use his race as a Māori in their response to the special rapporteur.
To the UN, yeah.
Oh, and the hypocrisy of this man who has, for this entire term of government, been talking about how race shouldn't be used for funding, it shouldn't be used for any type of identity, it shouldn't be used for X, Y, and Z. And for them to him blatantly say, I'm an Indigenous New Zealander and my fellow Māori don't need you to be telling us what to do from Geneva. I read that and I just couldn't believe it, to be honest with you.
That's fair though, isn't it? You can't use it for education, you can't use it for funding, you can't use it to protect your culture or your language. You can use it at the drop of a hat to hide behind when someone criticises you, though. That's the one true purpose.
Perfectly acceptable use. And I mean, this is the reason why we wrote the open letter to the United Nations and gave people the opportunity to sign it, to say that this man does not speak for us. And, we've got nearly 14,000 signatures on that in less than a week, which just demonstrates how many people are so over what I call flip-flop politics coming from him. He really is looking desperate because of the pressure that's been put on him regarding the regulatory standards bill. And I think I saw in one of the other articles calling it the beleaguered regulatory standards bill, because it really is at this point in time. So he's feeling the pressure, and that's where this, sort of erratic behaviour is coming from.
Yeah. Anything else to wrap up with, Tanya? Anything else that you want to get out there about what you're seeing in the world of politics at the moment?
Yeah, for me, I think there's a lot of sort of uncertainty at the moment in terms of heading into this next final, thank goodness, part of this government's term. And a lot of people are wondering, okay, how much worse can it get in this last part of the term? And the thing that I want people to remember, I suppose, is we're on the home straight now, people. We're over the halfway point. And the things that are happening now, and we can see them very clearly in these interviews that we've looked at tonight and in the news stories we've looked at tonight, they are cracking. They are starting to show the pressure that this term of government is putting on them, and that our people are starting to push back and acting collectively to put on them. So what I would encourage people to do is to start thinking about the next election now. Start thinking about who you're going to vote for. Start thinking about being strategic with your vote, because the only way that we do not end up in the same bloody situation again in the next election cycle is if we start to learn how to vote strategically. And if you do not want to see this absolute mess of a political situation that we've got right now, start thinking about how do we get a left bloc government in, and how do we give them enough power to do what needs to be done in this next term? Those are the big questions that we as a country really need to tackle moving into this next election. And it's something that I will definitely be talking about with my guests on my new podcast, because I want people to be ready to roll when it comes to the next election.
Super smooth.
You like what I did there?
So yeah, no, that's nice. It's really good. Once we figure out some more details about it, it'll even be more fun to tag that on to the end of everything. So where do we go to sign the letter, Chewie? You support that up?
Yes.
Yeah, I just put the letter up and I put the link in the chat. It's also on our Discord and it'll be on our Facebook very shortly.
Awesome.
But yes, this is something that I haven't signed yet. So we're
Oh,
gonna
you better
do
get
that.
signing, Chewie.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say that's very generous of you this time, Chewie, because the last time you chastised me for not doing something, which was the regulatory standards bill, you chastised me like I was a bad person. You hadn't done it yet. So I'm glad you didn't ask me if I've signed it yet, because I haven't and I will.
Well, both of you better sign it.
Yeah.
Both better sign it.
Yeah. No problems whatsoever. Just one last thing, though, because you were bringing up about strategic voting. It does raise the question, what the hell is Labour doing in the Tamaki Makaurau seat? Because if Labour win it, the government has an even stronger hold because of the overhang on government. You know, so like, I mean, you know, I just, doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense.
Well, and this is the thing, and this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of our people being strategic about what we do. And I'm talking about the entire left bloc. We can't get into this situation where we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, because the result of all of that will be that the right, you know, potentially has another crack at it, and we just cannot have that. The things that would happen if we had another right government immediately following this one I'd probably leave this country, to be honest. I'd probably leave. It would get that bad. So you're right. There has to be some very serious conversations that are held at high levels about what that looks like, and if I've got anything to do with it, and hopefully I will have something to do with it, I'll be having those conversations. So yeah, I mean, for our people though, what I have been telling all of my followers and everyone else to start doing is, number one, make sure you're registered. Number two, think about who you have the opportunity to vote for within your electorate, but then also think about your party vote, because there is a very strategic way that you can split if you don't have someone within your electorate to vote for the party that you want to vote for. There are so many different ways that you can approach it, and you need to be thinking about it now. And you need to be having those conversations with your family, with your friends. And the more that we can, I suppose, align how we get the best bang for our buck come election time, the better.
And I guess the black and white of it is, if Winston and or National or both of them blow up this regulatory standards bill, there's every chance David Seymour will chuck his toys. And I mean, in theory, there could be election much, much sooner than 15 months if they decided to do that.
Please let that happen.
All right,
Well, I
Tanya.
mean, that's why I was so, you know, part of me was really happy when I saw David Seymour saying, this is my bottom line and I will not, you know, I was happy because we didn't know up until that point what they would do if National or New Zealand First, you know, guts the bill, or if they fail to support it, you know, because they could have just said, oh, well, all right, well, we'll just carry on. But now that he's publicly come out and said, nah, this is a bottom line. If you guys do this, all bets are off. You know, we're going to walk away. Great. We literally are in snap election territory if this goes down. So
if they walk away. They may not walk away if they walk away.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Nobody knows. But I think now that he's said it publicly, it would be very difficult for him to walk away from that. And it would be difficult for him with his voters as well to walk away from that. You know, they would almost be like, well, you know, you have to do it now. And that's going to put them in such a difficult position if Winston pulls the plug. So roll on reading.
Thanks for jumping on tonight. We would plug your soon-to-be released podcast, but we don't have all the details yet. But maybe you and I catch up tomorrow and we'll talk some more out and we'll figure it out and see what's going on. But thank you for coming on tonight. Really, really appreciate you giving us some time. And we'll talk off a camera real soon, but I'm sure we'll talk again on camera soon as well. So we'll catch you when we get you.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, boys.